Welcome everyone to 2022. It is such a delight to have you all here joining us from all sorts of different places in the world. I see Michelle, you're here, Mark Amiot, you're here, tons of folks, Ron, Patrick, oh my gosh, Douglas, I should say, and Kelly. So thank you for all joining in, tuning in. We've got a really incredible day today. And so I want to just take a moment to quickly acknowledge you for being here, and also to say happy 2022, happy new year, happy holidays, Denise, Jan. It's great to see you all, Tracy, Dan, Yan. And really to welcome you. And I hope that you had a wonderful holiday season and that you're all in good health, that you're all ready to take on this 2022. And if you're not, that's okay too. You're in the perfect place to be supported by next level investors who care about you as well. So I'm not going to take a lot of time here. I just wanted to welcome you, and we've got a really special day, evening planned out for us. And I'd like to, just get straight into it today, not take up any more time. And we've got Richard Dolan joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, so Richard Dolan, have a little spotlight on you. Perfect. Welcome to the call. It's great to have you here, Richard.
Always good to be with you, Jennifer. And Happy New Year to you and the family. I trust you guys have been well fed, and well rested.
Likewise, absolutely, and I wish that for our entire community here today as well. Now, Richard, I want to set this up a little bit because you've been on the Real Estate Wealth Lab before, and we appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge and some of your insights and your contacts. And today's a little bit different because I wanted to talk more about you and get a sense, and also share a little bit about how we've worked together in the past, and what the heck have you been up to for the last few years?
Well, yeah, it's always so great to hang out with you and anybody and everybody here, especially if they're playing a game to get, richer in the things that matter around wealth, around money, and about worth. And, first and foremost, congratulations to you, Jennifer. I know that since you left your post from your former employment, which is where you and I got a chance to get to know each other slowly over nearly 8 years. I mean, talk about a slow learner. I'm accused of that. I am definitely guilty therein. But I've gotten to know who you are. And so you assembling the team as you have, working with the team you've got here, just bravo. Bravo for moving with velocity. Bravo for being true to your sense of gift and purpose. And bravo to your team, from Paige to Rob to Ken to Jan to, of course, Vince and Sundar and the entire Rule family. So well done. Well done. For me, for those who don't know me, I was born in the financial services businesses in 1991. I started off my career as a cold call cowboy. That's what we used to call ourselves. I just
want to be clear. You were born in the financial services in 1991, not born in 1991, right?
No, but listen, it's easy to be confused because I still look quite young because I bathe every night in extra olive virgin oil. So, I mean, just let's not get it confused. Definitely was not born in 1991. I'm old enough to remember that my cold calls was rotary phone, and I actually can look at my finger and see that it's actually bent as a result of making 300 cold calls a day every day for 3 years. But all kidding aside, I mean, I was born and raised in the financial services business. I raised lots of money, made lots of calls, promoted lots of things amongst the wealth management realm. And didn't get into the real estate space until I actually, in fact, left that space. I'd made money there, and then I realized I should park it somewhere. And we all know that the reason why we're in real estate is not just to get rich, but to stay wealthy. And so that's how I came to learn of real estate. I learned and studied under a lot of really important people, and one of which was Don Campbell. And that's how I came to learn not of just REIN, but to become a part of that community, which I miss immensely. And many of which are here. And if you're actually, you remember me, if we've met before, put your name in the chat room. I want to know where you are because not everyone's on camera. I'm getting to see, the warm and snuggly Douglas and Dan. And of course, I'm noticing that, of course, Patrick's, pulling double stroke here, doing some work and listening along the way. But Ron Northmore, he's intent. That guy's listening intensely, man. I see it. I see David in the house and Michelle. So for me, when I worked within that world of REIN, Jennifer, as you know, I kind of just moved into a world that already pre-existed before me. I mean, I was already hot off the press from working with the likes of a Tony Robbins. I had just come from a whirlwind of working within the financial services space. And I really kind of missed the mark in understanding just what made an everyday investor work. And I hate to admit it, but it took me 8 years to figure that out. But with that being said, and oh yes, Eric Martin, I do remember my NBA championship ring. By the way, I got my third one already. I working with the LA Lakers 2 years ago. I got my third one. So
Congratulations.
that's a lot of hardware. Yeah, it's all good. It just makes for a really great paperweight, quite frankly. But one more, and I'll get to have a napkin server reset. I can just roll them up and put them into the ring. So, for me, again, as a financial services guy and as someone who understands how wealth works, having been a student in the realm of research around happiness economics, investor resilience, behavioral finance, I really appreciate and understand humans' behavior and relationship to money. And I got to tell you, folks, it's pretty messed up. Just because we get rich doesn't mean we grow happier. Just because we have more doesn't mean we actually have to worry about less. Just because you end up having lots of properties doesn't mean the pains go away about having a certain financial future. So for me and you, Jennifer, we had that chance of really coming together at that time when I was still at Rain, and so were you. And if there's one thing we shared in common, was the value and the view that people who wanted to grow or preserve what mattered most to them needed more. And that's why when you called me to say, hey, Rich, would you come hang out with me in this real world? I said, you had me at hello because I know who you are. I know what makes you tick. So that's where I came from. And that's what I've been kind of building on.
And how, thank you. And I want to dig into a couple of things of how I recall working with you and what I remember working with you at Rain and with the qualities that you exhibited. And so we'll talk about that in a moment. But just to step back even one more for those who may or may not know you as well, how would you describe yourself now?
I'm an asshole. Okay. I'm definitely.
I was thinking more along an author or speaker.
No, seriously, I'm an asshole. I'm definitely. I got to be honest, guys. The older I get, the less patience I've got. And who here would disagree that the older you get, the less shit you put up with? Y'all get me? Denise, you're laughing because you know it's true, right?
She's got double hands up. Way to go, Denise.
But with all kidding aside, you really just realize that whether you call it an ego or a sense of self-concept or your view of what success looks like, we've been full of shit for a long time. And I just really kind of come to really own who I am and who I'm not. And so yes, I've been accused of being an author of 14 titles. Yes, I'm a visiting professor on the subjects that I've already talked about already. Yes, I'm a market leader and definitely a disruptor in the space. But if someone were to ask, what do you really, really love and are passionate about? Here it comes. I love getting people's relationship right with money, wealth, and worth, period. That's what I love. I believe that if you actually are able to move the needle in that space, that realm, that world for people, I don't care what it's going to take. Some people used to say, well, just because you're rich doesn't make you happier. Well, the research just came out and Bloomberg just reported, actually, we've been wrong. The more money you make, it actually does solve a lot of different problems, except for the mother-in-law that's still hanging out in your guest suite or the garage that still needs to be cleaned out. But that notwithstanding, and not making fun of anybody's mother-in-laws in the garage or in the basement or guest suite, of course, because mine's welcome to stay in my garage as long as she wants.
Good catch there, my friend. This is being recorded.
But with all kidding aside, what I really am truly madly in love with is innovating and disrupting just sort of the status quo. Because I've come to realize, and if you're writing down any notes, before I say hello to a very dear friend of mine, if you're writing any notes, comfort is a killer. Folks, comfort is a killer, especially if you're playing a financial game. So here's the reality. This computer up here that's been perfected over 3 million years has only been perfected to do one thing. And I've been saying it for a long time, and that's one thing, and that's to survive. Just get by, survive to live another day. Don't get eaten, don't get murdered, get to sleep all intact. And that's why our predisposition, our pre-wiring has us play small, start small, stay shrunk, get stuck. So whenever you want to generate more, anytime you want to generate more cash flow, more portfolio, buy more doors or start going up, there's an unconscious, subconscious saboteur going on. It's like, hey, slow down. We've got enough. We don't need all that. What's your wife going to say? What's your husband going to think? And on it goes. So you've got this battle of two existences, one where your predisposition is just be okay with what you've got or what you don't have, and the other saying, gosh, but I need more. Have you not noticed that my kids are hungry? that my 30 and 43-year-olds still living at home? Do you not realize that my mother-in-law is using Wi-Fi at a rate I can't afford? All this stuff takes money. All this stuff takes money. So for me, I realize, and if you're writing down any notes, you got to write this down, that anytime, and this is the time, a time of crisis, the ultimate antidote is cash flow. And if there's one thing we've learned in the past 2 years of this post-pandemic, and I do say post because we're kind of at the end, but it seems like it's the longest ninth inning ever, that if you want to really, truly, in fact, push back on the impact and influence that has on you, just increase cash flow. And that's why I love that you've launched Rule and doing those things.
Well, thank you. And I think it's really interesting, Richard. There's kind of three questions that I have for you. And by the way, yes, David Falk is joining us, just so that we're very clear. He's just joining us on the top of the hour here. So just stay buckled right in there.
Because people don't realize that once my partner, my friend, and the man behind Jumpman gets on, none of us are going to get a word in. So I want to say to David, listen, back up. You're coming in at 8. So I told him the event starts at 8 o'clock, guys. Let's keep that between us. I said, God, listen, David, you want to be prompt, but it starts at 8 o'clock. I needed to get all this in before he showed up.
Right on. Very cool. Well, so you and I, we worked together for 5 years, a full 5 years. And I got to experience you as not an asshole, by the way, for the record, but as a speaker. You produced incredible amounts of content, a performance mindset, and where I would say that we really, really, like you said, in line was our passion for wealth preservation and financial freedom. What have I missed? Is there anything I've missed?
Oh, look, I mean, I don't know how many people here are our parents. I mean, what a blessing to be one. If you're not yet, then, buckle up and think twice. If you've decided not to, congratulations, you made the right choice. I'm just kidding. No, but I mean, I'm definitely a father first, a husband second, and my wife will always remind me that I'll always be second to our son. But I mean, for me, I think, and for all of you here at Rule, there's definitely a new line that I would add to my bio. There's a new credential, if I may, and I'd love to lend it to you, Jennifer, being an asset and an extension of what you're doing here at Rule, and that is that I'm an alchemist. I'm an alchemist, being able to turn nothing into something. And that's found in the way in which I collaborate with people, which will be evidenced tonight, demonstrated here live digitally with my dear friend, my business partner, my client, David Falk. I mean, a man who's responsible for billions of dollars on behalf of many great professional athletes, one of which, of course, being Michael Jordan. But none of that would be really possible collaborating with great people, connecting with wonderful professionals, and being able to create and cause things that have yet to be realized. And if anyone's writing down notes, I'd write that down before I turn it back to you, Jennifer. Causing and creating means authoring what comes next. And a lot of people talk about, writing your goals. A lot of people say, and do that twice a day. Heck, some even people would say, write down your objectives and then review on Friday to see how you've done. But when you author it by the perspective of causing and creating a future, what you're really doing is you're living from the future to the present. So it's behaving, it's talking, it's causing and creating every day as if you're already there, which starts to shift a lot of things. And so I find that I've been a real catalyst for growth. I've been a real champion for 10xing people's dreams, goals, and ambitions. That's why I was the go-to guy for Grant Cardone for about a couple of years, an experience I'll never forget, because he's the ultimate American, and he actually reintroduced me to my Americanness, because I mean, I'm Canadian, right? I'm born and raised in Toronto. Don't hold that against me, Edmonton or Calgary. I know what you're thinking, but I mean, I'm born and raised in Toronto. But as Canadians, I mean, we're known as the 3 C's. We're cheap, we're conservative, and we're chicken. And so for all the years I've been teaching education around money, wealth, and worth in Canada, people say, hey, calm down there, eh? There's nothing wrong with a good Tim Hortons, a Timbit, and, a pair of tickets to a Maple Leaf there game there, eh? I mean, like, listen, it's true. Normal's cool. Average is fine. But in the world of real estate, here's what I've realized, that being able to create the ultimate multiplier in the real estate game isn't just about money. It's about me, like as in you. You get to play. You get to broker deals. You get to go crunch the numbers. You get to nerd out, Jennifer, and I've seen you do that. You get to see Mark put on those headphones that looks like he's about to launch a missile set from where he lives, and like just delve into his stuff. Like all of us here, from David to Jan to Michelle to Vienna to Andrew Mulder. I mean, we all dig real estate because it's our state. It's a place we get to retreat because we have fun building something out of a world that's in parallel to the one you already live in. Do you get what I'm saying? Just give me an okay. So for me, I think I would definitely be a champion for growth. I'm definitely an ambassador for more, and I get evangelistical about 2, 5, 10xing people's real estate portfolios in half the time they thought. That's what I would add, Jennifer.
Beautiful. And I think I'm gonna take us down that path a little bit further because there's something more I want to unpack. When you mentioned just in how you came across there, something that really stood out for me, and it's a bit of a theme that we're exploring this month at the Real Estate Wealth Lab, and that is in many ways relationships and how to develop relationships and keep and maintain relationships. And you even mentioned that with David Falk and how he's created this massive empire. And of course, you don't do that alone. And this is something that and I'll bring it back to this in a moment. But before I do, I would like to ask you a question. I see that actually someone else asked it in the chat even already, is what happened with, if I may ask you a very bold question, what happened with you and Rain? Why did you leave?
That's a good question. And that's a pretty bold question. So for a lot of you who don't know me, I mean, I turned gray largely when I worked with Rain. So I blame my hair color during my tenure at that time, and largely because of all the members we got out of Ottawa. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. I'm not going to blame Ottawa for that. But all kidding aside, I mean, first of all, nothing happened. There was no big spat. There was no blow up. I have a massive amount of love and affection for Patrick Francie, his bride, Stephanie, Hanlon Francie, who are doing an incredible job continuing to really uphold the spirit of what Rain stood for. That when its predecessor, which was not Don, but it was actually Tim, when they first founded it, it was all about coming together over a real bad cup of coffee and talking about what was going on locally in the marketplace in a hotel setting. That's it. And that was wonderful. It was a wonderful thing that they created, a community, a home, a place folks like us can hang out in. But at the time, I really believed that I was in the middle of really a crossroads where the team that I was surrounded by had a view of what the future would look like, and I had a different view. Now, by the way, folks, I just want to just get real with you for a moment. Have you ever been in the middle of a conversation around a topic where your view of the world was polar opposite to theirs? I don't know, like let's say Republican, Democratic, or liberal against conservative, or vaccine or not to vaccine. Just some examples. But where you're actually standing across from someone who believes something so visceral, opposite to what you believe to be true in your heart, in your soul, and in your bones. It's visceral. It's a part of you that you just realize that you're just different. And there's nothing wrong with different. In fact, we celebrate diversity. But when you're operating in a business and you have a view of the world in the future that takes you left, and others are saying it's actually right, and that's the right way, and your way is not, then that becomes sort of, well, the way in which you part. So when I departed from Rain, I left on the premise that we just had varying opinions of what we valued. We had varying opinions of what we held true, and we had definitely a differing of opinions on what should come next. And so that's why what you're doing, Jennifer, really resonates with me. But I will add, just because I know Patrick is paying attention, Mr. Hunt, so intently. I want to share this with you, brother.
Well, that's my dad, by the way.
I know. I love him. But he's on the system at Deborah's expense, your mom's expense. But I want to make it clear is I don't know if you guys have ever had the experience of this, but have you ever left a job or a post, a role or a company, even an industry, and you had this period where you just kind of didn't know what was going to come next? And the universe just kind of, or the world or your experience just kind of like delivered you something. And you're like, oh, wow, I just rediscovered myself. Anyone ever had that experience? For me, it was finding Grant Cardone. And it's not to call him a savior. And he's definitely not a spiritual guru. If he was a spiritual guru, I mean, it all hail to money. Like, I mean, they don't come more American than that. But he really represents to me to what it meant to want more, what it meant to understand that success. And I want you to write this down because it was something that really stuck with me. And it's a part of my DNA that success, my friends, success is your duty. Success is your duty. And when you look at that and when you realize that combined with what and how I've been living, I realize and now know and have to own that the way we live, the way we lead, the way we laugh, the way we laugh, the way we live, the way we love, all brings you what you leave, because that's ultimately your legacy. So for me, I just know that in the time I spent as a result of leaving Rain, discovering Grant and working with him for a good couple of years, I 5X'd his business, understood the laws of 10Xing, and said, you know what, I got to get back to my own real estate game of educating and empowering and elevating. I mean, because gosh, I just miss the folks I used to work with. I've grown grayer. Jerry Rakowski would like to know that if I've grown leaner, and it's so not true. I've got what's called pandemic weight, where it's right through and down to my toes. So
You're not alone. You're not alone.
My feet have actually even grown 3 sizes. Don't know how that happened. But the point of the matter is that for me, you know, whatever you're committed to, folks, I want you to write this down because it might be a little bit interpersonal before we welcome on David Falk. But whatever you're committed to, your body follows. So, I mean, if you got into real estate because you really want to make sure that you've got enough cash for yourself, your loved ones, and those you're leaving behind, then that's become your real rock. If you're doing it because you really have fun crunching the numbers and cranking deals, then that becomes the epicenter of the reason why you do this. But at the end of the day, if no one comes in and says, but Dan, Denise, David, Michael, Mark, Naran, Ken, Jan, it's time for more, like incrementally more. What's nice is you get to discover a little bit more about who you are, not what you earn. You get to expand a little bit about who you've become and what you have been now, not just what you own. Because a lot of you would really, really agree with me, I think. And I still own my properties. I still got a portfolio on both sides of the border. It doesn't matter how many doors I own. I just love I've grown. It doesn't matter how many doors I've owned. It matters to me how I've grown, how I'm nurturing investors, how I'm brokering joint venture partnerships, how I'm working with investors. And I got to tell you, I love the person I've become. And I now own that. And I think my Rain experience, because of that, I really miss those people. And I've never said to them, thank you. I've never had the opportunity ever to say, thank you so much for letting me into your lives, letting me into your evenings, letting me speak in front of you and for you and with you for all those years, whether you liked it or not. I mean, like you were kind of trapped because I used to lock the doors when they got sat down. But thank you for being there for me. Thank you for letting me be there for you. And I miss you, period. That's it, full stop.
Yeah, beautiful. Well said, Richard. And you know, it's interesting. I mean, in some ways, we get to choose, hopefully, who gets to remain our friends and who wants to still come on this journey of next level. And something that you said in terms of what changed and transpired for you was that you got to really focus in on what was important and coming back into yourself. And that's what this year has also been for me in many ways, because of the support of a number, mostly our executive team with the Real Estate Wealth Lab, who have come out of the woodworks. My gosh, you guys, I'm so delighted and grateful for them to come out and support this creation of what is next for next level investors. What's next, what's now, what's new, and supporting me in my journey. Yes, Richard? No.
Go. You got me all excited because I know that David's here and waiting on us. But what's next and new is you asked me for something, and I mean, this might be consistent. Is it too early for me to say this out loud?
Well, why don't I ask it out loud?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right. Because of that, and because of the amazing people that have surrounded this team, as well as and who are devoted to next level real estate investors, I mean, quite frankly, Richard, I'd like to work with you again. So I would like to ask publicly and for the record, and in this crazy scenario,
are you proposing to me? Are you proposing to me? This is kind of weird. I'm married.
I didn't bring a ring. Darn. But I would love for you to consider taking a role with the Real Estate Wealth Lab, and in particular, I would love for you to consider our Chief Growth Officer.
Wow, that's big. I mean, it was a proposal, by the way, Ken.
I know it was.
Listen, I know that David's time is limited because he's on vacation, and I promised him that at 8 o'clock he'd be here, but he's really prompt and early. And remember what I said earlier on, folks, we just got started. So David, we're coming, buddy. So first of all, I'm honored. I mean, 100% I'm honored. There's nothing to think about. There's nothing to consider, but I have a counteroffer. Here's my counteroffer. I would take on this role working with you again because you're a delight to work with. I mean, there's no one more passionate about real estate, passionate about numbers and crunching out the economics. No one more committed to really being of service to people in the real estate game and getting to the next level than that woman right there, Jennifer Hunt. So, I mean, if you say jump, I'll ask how high. That's number one. Number two is, you know, I love to be the chief growth officer for all things rural on the condition that, here comes the counteroffer, I don't want to be the company's chief growth officer. I want to be the membership's chief growth officer because I'm not interested in growing a company. I'm more interested in growing people. I'm more interested in growing your portfolios for the next level. I want to be able to grow your relationship to getting right with money, wealth, and worth. I don't need to go and grow the company and increase the bottom line. I've got enough, and I'm grateful and blessed and humbled to be here to be able to work with some amazing people like you, Jennifer, like David Falk, for goodness sakes, who I've admired and looked up to for years. I mean, it's time that people had their own chief growth officer, and that would be measured and demonstrated in helping you devise a plan on how you're going to, 1, 2, 5, or 10x your portfolio. That'll be demonstrated by me teaching you how to raise funds, how to find new joint venture partners, how to procure investors, how to build your own fund, how to build your own LLC or group partnership or general partnership or go public even. I'll even teach you how to, in fact, create a succession plan that isn't about having to let go of your money, like an intergenerational transference of wealth. Because we all know that if you leave the money to the kids, they're going to spend it anyways. I'm talking about a intergenerational wealth transference, a multi-generational plan, so that they get to build it and grow it for your kids' kids in years to come. If that's what you're saying, if you're cool with that, Jennifer, then I will be the member's chief growth officer, 100%. I'll start Monday.
Yes. So that's a yes.
That's a yes.
That's a yes. That is fantastic. And
that's cool.
Richard, and this is something that, I mean, I love this match. I love that you're joining the team in this way, because this is something that I know powerfully about you in all the years that we've worked together, is that you are in it for other people. You're as devoted and like fully into it for caring about others. And I think that that's where we have a really amazing synergy with this entire team. Well,
and I got to say this with the only 3 minutes we've got left, and that's, 3 minutes Canadians, like 6 minutes American. I mean, for me, here's the best part is I'm only a growth guy, folks. So, for me, it's about, if you want to grow a portfolio, I'm the guy. If you want to be able to really scale up and go across the border, yes, I'll get to those questions later on. I mean, 100% I can show you. If you want me to teach you what Grant Cardone's done in 4 years from zero to $2.2 billion, I can show you what he did. If you want to go out there and be an influencer, a coach, a mentor in the real estate investment game, I have the plan. I'll show you the pathway. But the best part is, if that doesn't resonate with you, guess what? This isn't my company. It's Jennifer's company. And Vincent and Naran and Ken and Rob and Paige. I'm just here to grow you. So if growth matters to you, if preserving and protecting what you've got matters to you, if next level investing from that perspective matters, then I will not. And I will say this one more time. I promise not to let you down.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I've just got to announce this then. So ladies and gentlemen, members of the Real Estate Wealth Lab, congratulations, and meet, I've now pronounced your chief growth officer.
Wow. That sounds, are there lawyers here? Have we got a recording of this? Like, will I be having to sign something later?
I'm pretty sure there's something to be signed. I don't know.
Now I know why Patrick was here. He's the witness. He's the witness. Right. Well, and that's a great segue to David being here. I mean, for me and for all of you, if we can just maybe transition with your permission, Jennifer.
Yes, please.
And look at me already exercising some alpha with my new Chief Growth Officer title. I mean, when you think about next level, if you're writing down any notes, you've got to put in the header. You must write this down. Partnerships matter. I mean, partnerships matter, and that's what grows portfolios. And for those who don't know, I met David Falk originally years ago. And for anybody here who recalls When I first told the story, when I first met Juwan Howard, who at the time was playing with the Miami Heat at the time, prior to winning his championship ring, his first, by the way, at that particular time, he was represented by a man by the name of David Falk, a legendary NBA sport agent, which, by the way, is a bit small considering the fact that you had many actors, actresses, and even musicians like LL Cool J, who wanted to be represented by one of the most powerful sports agents in the industry. But what was amazing about having met David, I'm going to say the story quickly as he's now here live and we're going to go right through him and to him, is when I really got to meet him in a real personal way. I was negotiating with the Miami Heat at the time an opportunity to buy a piece of the team for Juwan Howard. If you recall, Magic Johnson had bought a piece of a very beautiful LA Dodgers team with a huge investor syndicate. So he had raised a lot of money. He was the lead investor and he was the sole owner with this great syndicate behind him. So far, so good, thumbs up. Well, I needed to lobby the guy that gave the advice and leadership and the insight on whether the future was going, called David Falk. And David said no to me. In fact, David didn't say no once. I mean, I came at David 6 ways till Sunday. I mean, I would do everything and anything to try and get it through to him. And he was so polite. He was the nicest man I've ever met that said no 100% of the time to me. So I never forgot that. I mean, I never forgot that. At least that's what my therapist tells me. Never forget those moments. But all kidding aside, I stayed in touch. And fast forward, just about a couple of years ago, right at the beginning of the pandemic, we collaborated on a project to get the NBA playing safely again. We were going to launch the standard for safe sport. I had invested in a COVID-19 testing facility, something that now, of course, looking back, is I should have had a storehouse of them, but we sold most of them off. And David was an incredible mensch. He was a mentor and a friend, and you know, true and form to who his mother was, and the spirit of her lives on in much of his endowment to a school under his name, by the way, a division that teaches marketing and strategy and leadership. But David was very kind to me, and in that time, I learned something. I learned what really, really rich people do with their money, and they don't just collect Air Jordans because he does, and by default, but he invests in real estate. So as I got to lean in and listen more, I said, David, you're not just investing in any ordinary real estate. Tell me, given the fact that you've done so much for so many incredible iconic brands, not just like Michael Jordan, but also Patrick Ewing and many, many more, why are you investing in real estate the way you've chosen? So without giving you the answer or telling you what I learned, I'm so delighted to call this man my friend. Probably more just moved to call him my mentor, but delighted to call him a partner, Mr. David Falk. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Excellent. Nice to be with you. I got to start off and say I love your suggestion to the group about success is our duty, because you mentioned my mother. My mother is my lifetime mentor. She was a highly educated woman. She spoke 8 languages. She graduated college at 19 when women didn't go to college. And her mantra for me, which has become my life mantra, is always shoot for the stars and never settle for second best. And I think really successful people in any walk of life, financial, athletic, Hollywood, real estate, are successful because they're driven to be successful. They're almost compulsive to be successful, not to see where they could be on the Forbes 100 list, or so they're, could buy fancy cars. They do it to satisfy their own internal yearning to achieve. So I love success is our duty. I'm going to write that down as a corollary to my mother. Delighted to be with you, Rich. As Rich mentioned, we're partners in business. We're friends. I have a great deal of respect for one of the great networking people I've ever met. And we're trying to tap into each other's networks. So to answer with that as a prelude, because I'm not going to be a lawyer and not answer your question. Real estate fascinated me most recently. I got involved in senior living, not simply in commercial real estate or residential or multifamily, but I think that as you follow trends, I was trained in education as a lawyer. I'm a lawyer by training. And lawyers are taught to look at the past as a guideline for the future, sort of the famous expression, the past is prologue to the future. So if any of you have children or you've gone to law school, very first day of law school, you learn about a famous case from like the late 1700s where a British freighter sank and they were trying to determine the liability for the goods that were lost. It was called Hadley versus Baxendale. Now, if I had great grandchildren in the year 3025, the first day of law school, they're going to study Hadley versus Baxendale. And they've been studying it for the last 300 years because the law is an attempt to try to understand what should happen in the future based on the precedent of the past. So that was my training. But as my career developed in my 20s, I sort of morphed into becoming an entrepreneur. And entrepreneurs have the exact opposite skill set. They want to throw away the past. They don't care what was hot in the 80s, what kind of music was in, or, you know, people didn't have the internet in the 80s. They didn't do gaming online. They didn't have mobile phones. And they're taught to look into the future and try to determine where will the world be 5 to 10 years from now, and what kinds of goods and services are they going to require. And really great entrepreneurs invent stuff that you always want to say, gosh, that's so obvious. Like, why didn't I think of that? Uber. Like, Uber's like a $70 billion company. You say, God, that's not rocket science, having a car instead of a taxi. Like, why didn't I think of that? I'll give you another great one, Rich. When I was in college, if you would have told me that people would spend like $2.50 for a bottle of water that comes from the same reservoir as your tap water, and they're going to say, well, you know, it comes from the Alps, or it comes from, you know, Italy, or it comes from Fuji. You know, it's crazy. You know, when I took my family to Scandinavia about 10 years ago, on the jet that I fly on, they have this Norwegian water. And so I got to Norway, and trying to act like I knew what was going on, I asked the people, you know, do you have Voss waters? One of my favorites. And they said, oh, no, we just give that to the dumb Americans. We don't drink that at home. So for real estate, for me, we're in the grain of our population. One of the fastest growing segments of our population is people who are centennials, 100 years old. And now, more than ever, post-pandemic, actually, we're still in the pandemic. I wish we were post, but as we hopefully move out of the pandemic, this could be a tremendous need across North America, for sure, for housing for seniors that is safe and is designed to address the issues that the pandemic presented to us. You know, spacing of the units, the hardware that you touch, in case touching becomes a problem again. And so I think it's an amazing opportunity for us, Rich, in senior living to develop properties that are custom made for both the grain of our population and the concerns that affluent people have for safe housing. And I think a lot of the older things that have been built are obsolete, you know, because of people of means are not going to put their families, their parents, their loved ones in facilities where disease could be rampant. As a person trained in economics, it's the part of the supply curve that is vertical, it's inelastic. You know, people say, what does that mean? I said, what it means is if you're Larry Ellison and you buy a yacht, you put your order in for a yacht, it's going to be $400 million. And one day your accountant calls up because he's in America and they say, God, Larry, bad news. They just passed like a new luxury tax on yachts. All yachts over 200 million have a 25% tax, so that your $400 million yacht is now $500 million. Now he has two choices. Choice A, he can sit down with his wife and say, what do you think, sweetie? Should we get rid of the 8 staterooms and only have 5 so we could try to save that 100 million? Or do you say, big freaking deal, got to spend an extra 100 million instead of paying in tax? Who cares? And so I think that people of means, knowing the challenges of both the aging of the population and the challenges of staying healthy, in a very, very complicated world, are going to look for nice, well-positioned housing that's safe and addresses the needs. So, when you talk about investing, I think savvy investors try to understand the forces at work in our world that change the value of things, like they changed Uber. I have a friend in New York, Andrew Murstein, whose father was the #1 company that got taxi medallions, which cost $100,000 a piece in New York. If you want to drive a taxi, you have to get a licensed medallion. Okay, guess what? If you want to drive an Uber, I guarantee it doesn't cost $100,000. Might not even cost $100. And so Uber changed the way we look at transportation in New York. We're on the advent of driverless cars across the country, electric cars. I mean, you'll tell your kids, like, my favorite car when I was 18 years old was a Pontiac GTO. It had a 400 horsepower engine. It went really fast. It looked cool. If I told my grandkids that my dream car was a gas-powered car, they'd look at you like, wow, did that come right after the horse and buggy? Like, where did that come in? They're going to think, you can't be serious that you actually like a non-electric car. And so I think in the world of real estate, for sure, in the world of investments, I think savvy investors aren't people that have analytical minds and figure out better PE ratios and better cap rates. They're people who understand where the world is going and how they can supply a product or a service that is for the future. And that's what I hope that we do in our company, Rich. And you can be. I love that title Jennifer bestowed upon you. That was great.
Amazing.
Well deserved.
You're a good man. She and I worked well together for years, and as you and I have also begun to work well. But what you've come to say, and what we've come to now learn, is you are really sort of like the unspoken, unsung hero of futurism. You kind of get a sense of where the future is heading because you have a way of looking at the present in a certain way. And so when you look at right now, how much of how the world has been wrestling with the pandemic, and you and I have been chatting through the whole pandemic, that's how we grew much closer during that time, a time I'll never forget, and I'm super grateful for, by the way. But during that time, you realize that mankind's really got a crisis of confidence in healthcare, in the way in which governments are thinking about how people will gracefully grow older, where that will happen, and the kind of services that they'll actually have access to. Did you sense this, given the way you entered into that asset class, the adult active care facility world? Did you have a sense of that? And if so, when did that occur to you?
Well, sort of, it was a two-step process, I would say. So step one, when I teach, I have my own college, you mentioned, I like to teach. And one of the things I teach my students, because, to teach, whether you're teaching someone golf or you're teaching economics or you're teaching marketing, I think you have to address it in a way that people will remember what you're trying to teach them. It's not enough just to say it. One of my favorite people in the world died last year, named John Thompson, who was the basketball coach at Georgetown. He was a brilliant man, and he had like a PhD in human nature. He really understood people. And he would say to me from time to time, because I'm a very impatient listener, I like to interrupt. And he said, David, let me explain something to you. Hearing is physical, but listening is psychological. You have to want to listen. So I was involved in a real estate company I started about 2014 with a person that hadn't been in real estate before, but was a friend, and I lost a lot of money. Now, you can have one of two reactions when you get in a situation like, say, okay, forget real estate, not for me, I'm not comfortable. Or you could be stubborn and competitive like I am, both, and say, God, I'm not going to walk away as a loser. I really believe that there's a way to do this, but I didn't do it the right way. I didn't pick the right horse. I didn't pick a person who was an expert, who had experience, or had a good vision. And so I met the gentleman, in Florida, Joel Anderson, who had 30 years experience, was on the governor's commission, the chairman of the board, governor's commission on senior living in Florida. And I said to him, look, I really believe in the space. I think the aging, as I mentioned, the aging of the population, but you are an expert. in operations, you understand the needs, right down to the bricks and mortar. And so we got together. So it was a little bit out of stubbornness. At the time we got together, it was just around the onset of the pandemic. So I don't want to mislead anyone and say I had this amazing look into the future. I knew the pandemic was going to come. Just like Trump had no vision, knowing the pandemic was going to end. He thought it was going to end in, April of 2000. And he was only 1 million people, deaths off, but he was close. But it was fortuitous. And I think in business, you have to have a great plan, and you have to be facile enough to be able to pivot as you see forces around you changing. That's what makes great entrepreneurs, the ability to. You're not going to be successful every time out of the box, and you have to learn from your mistakes. So I like to say when I teach that I come from the Clint Eastwood School of Business. And my students say, Mr. Falk, what on earth does that mean? I said it means, and I can't do a great imitation, a man's got to know his limitations. You got to know what you're good at, what you're not good at. What you're not good at, you have to find really smart people and around you. Obviously, you have an amazing network of people in the financial world. I wanted to access that not only for our real estate business, but for other businesses I'm in, as you know. And because I, like you, I do believe in partnership. I worked my whole life representing athletes from team sports, and they were the best in the world at what they do, but they weren't boxers, they weren't tennis players, they weren't golfers, they didn't play for themselves. And the greatest ones had to learn how to mold their talents, their incredible talents, and work with people who weren't as good as they were at what they did, but that they needed on the team in order to win. And I think great quarterbacks, great generals know how to harness the power of everyone on the team to make it synergistic, to make the sum of the parts, great, make the whole greater than the sum of the parts. I'm in a SPAC. I'm in 2 SPACs actually right now, 2 special purpose acquisition companies. And I was asked to be the chairman of the first one, offered a lot of money. I was very intrigued, but I had my own reasons I didn't want to be the chairman. So I said to the founder, I said, I'm going to recommend a guy to be our chairman, Harvey Schiller. He's an older gentleman. He's 82 years old, started his business career at age 46 as a retired brigadier general in the Air Force. And he has the best resume of anyone I've ever met in my life. He was the commissioner of the Southeast Conference of Football, which is the #1 college conference. For those of you who watched the national championship Monday night, Alabama, Georgia, both in the SEC. He then went and became the head of the U.S. Olympic Committee prior to the Dream Team in '92. Then he became the president of Turner Broadcasting. Then he founded the Yankees Nets Network. Then he did the America's Cup. He ran a sports agency in Canada called Asante. He's on the Hall of Fame committee in baseball. The guy's just he's a great guy. And what I learned in the course of the SPAC over the last year and a half, we have a lot of very, very talented people who've been very successful and all have big egos. And you need one person to be the damn general to control the group. And so you'll love this, Rich. So we're doing the money raise for the SPAC. We're trying to raise $250 million. And Harvey and myself and a third gentleman named John Miller, who was the chairman of AOL before they sold to Time Warner, another old friend of mine from the NBA, we raised $1.3 billion in 5 days. And in order to manage the calls, Harvey said, okay, we're going to be on these just like this. We're on a Zoom with, one every hour for like 10 hours a day. We have to have some stability in these discussions. So don't answer a question if I don't call on you. So we all said, great. So we're on a call. Guy asked me a question. Harvey said, "Good, David, answer the question." So I answered. He had a follow-up question. And I started to answer the follow-up. And Harvey interrupts me and said, "Excuse me, did I call on you?" No, sir. Now, so you need a general who can harness the talents, the disparate talents of the group and make it work. And so I've spent my whole career in team sports. And I definitely believe no matter how talented you think you are, no matter how successful you think you've been, it always takes a team of people to make you better. And if you're successful at building relationships, which I know, Rich, is a thing we both have placed a very, very strong premium on, that as you get old, like I am now, you can call on these relationships you develop, and you could marry a lot of the things that you're doing in business together to truly make a synergy. And that's where I spend the majority of my time now. Is I'm involved in about 15 different businesses, and I try to interconnect them because I think there are a lot of overlaps, and that's what I really, really enjoy the most.
Well, I think you're right. If you're making any notes, by the way, if you're just loving this, let's give David a little bit of love. Go into the chat room and just let him know if you're enjoying this. Just put in a yes. That way he knows he's
But
on.
now you can do like 2 thumbs down, and I'll
If you get 2 thumbs down, you're going to be out of here. But
and I do wanted to say thank you, David. This is amazing to have you for a Real Estate Wealth Lab. Thank you for being here.
I would do anything for Rich. I'm a big Rich Dolan fan. He's a master networker. People never met anyone that doesn't really like Rich Dolan. Very hardworking man. And I'm proud that we're friends and partners.
Well, I'm grateful for that. I'll have to ask you to repeat that and sign a document at the end. But all kidding aside, I mean, one of the things I want people to write down is the following 3 things. Number 1 is what's going to really shape your next level of experience with your portfolio is going to amount to how many more properties you look at. So if you want to, in fact, grow your portfolio, you're going to have to look at a lot more prospective properties. That's option 1. Option 2 is you're going to have to go out there and collaborate with a lot of other people that are doing the same. So you can pick and choose what you want by being able to sort of like cherry pick great opportunities. And in this hot market, that's kind of tough. But the other avenue, especially as a chief growth officer would say, and especially with a David here, is you can do what's called cross-pollinating. And cross-pollinating is really coming together where you and another do something together. And that's precisely why David and I are here working with Joel Anderson at Lifestar, because Joel's the operator, the developer. I mean, he knows that asset class really well. And David being an agent, a professional sports agent for over 4 decades plus, and I mean, seriously still active, but grudgingly would say no, is very good at understanding where the future is heading by listening to his clients now. And then for me, I'm just an opportunist. I'm looking for a great way to bring great conversations into the world. And as a person who's looking at next level thinking, I like leveraging relationships with David by being able to reference his name, his brand, his track record, and the asset class like adult active care and Joel Anderson. David, tell me, given the analogy I drew, cross-pollination, you're no stranger to that. You've cross-pollinated all the time, and you've got a very famous example I need not remind you of. But tell us, what would your spin be on that in the few short minutes we've got left? Because I want to respect you're on vacation.
No, I'm good.
But given taking
I do charge overtime after 8:30, but I'm fine.
All right, well, let's get right to it. When you take MJ, when you take the GOAT, when you take Michael Jordan, and you take a shoe company like Nike, what is it that you saw that very few, if anyone else, saw? What is it that you saw in that moment?
So I'm going to backtrack about 1 minute, and then I'll respond. So I started this.
Do I have to pay for this minute that you rewound?
My time. My minute. It's a long minute, but so when I started the business, I was 23 years old, and I went to work for a law firm that represented most of the major American tennis players: Arthur Ashe, Stan Smith, Marty Riessen, Gorman, and later on came to represent Jimmy Connors, Lendl. Most of the major. And I didn't know anything about tennis. I really wasn't a tennis guy. But I got into it, and as I said earlier, you have to learn what you don't know. And I got so far back, I'm losing my train of thought. But I learned that each business, if you will, each of these players was a business, not very small business, and they each had what I wouldn't call it a brand, but they had a certain something that they represented to the public. If you think about this, I'm playing golf on Monday with one of your favorites, Wayne Gretzky, here at Michael's club. I love Wayne Gretzky, the great one. I think I mentioned, I love Wayne. He's one of the most humble people that I know, for a person who's accomplished so much, and he definitely has a certain image that that you'd put with certain products. So when Michael was a rookie, it was before the age of marketing. No one in basketball had ever been marketed at all. Larry Bird, Dr. J, Magic Johnson, nobody. Magic had one national deal his first 5 years in the league. And I went to people because I was sort of bored, if I could use that. I was thrilled to be doing what I was doing. But the prevailing wisdom at the time, when you're representing athletes, you say, okay, you have Michael, like in 5 years, if he's really great, you could do the kinds of things that Magic did. And I thought to myself, wow, if Michael wanted to do the kind of things Magic did, he should have hired Magic Manager. Like, why is he hiring me in order to do things that that Magic did? And so in the progression of my career, I went out to all the companies that I had established relationships with my first 10 years in business when Michael came along. And I said, I believe that this man, it could be one of the most exciting players in years. I didn't say he could be the best. No one knew that. And I only want to have 10 affiliations his entire career. It's like, I'm going to build a country club. I'm going to build Augusta, but I'm only going to have 10 members. Now, you don't know how good Augusta's going to be, but I'm telling you, it's going to be really special. And I'm inviting you to be one of the first 10 members. If you tell me, hey, David, what the hell do you know about golf? You don't know how to build a golf club. I ain't going to join. That's your prerogative. I won't be offended in the least. But when you find out that it's the best golf club in the world and you want to be member number 11, I'm going to say, excuse me, were you hearing or listening? I told you 10 members and that's it. And so we created what I call the philosophy of scarcity. We created a scarcity in the marketplace before he was anything. Nike, I hope I'm not being sexist by making this remark. Nike was like the girl you wanted to date, but she would never go out with. So the first 5 proposals I made with Nike, they turned me down. They were all for tennis players. And I finally
It's all right, David. It works all other ways too,
Okay. So I told the head of marketing, who became my best friend in the biz, Rob. I said, Rob, I'm going to offer you guy number 6. And if you turn me down, no problem. I will never call you again. Now, at this point, Nike was probably a $20 million company. Today, they're like $220 billion. So they were tiny. They weren't Adidas, which is the #1 company in the world. We represented the owner of Adidas, Horst Dassler, whose father, Adi Dassler, had founded the company. They weren't Converse in America, which was the official shoe of the NBA and the official shoe of the Olympics. They were like an upstart. So when Michael came out, I felt that Nike needed him the most. Converse had Dr. J, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Adidas had Kareem, had all these like star players. And I wanted the company to market Michael because I thought, without making any pun on the way he played, we needed someone to jumpstart his career off the court. And I thought that Nike needed him the most. And the most important thing we did in his first deal, we did 2 interesting things that no one's ever written about. One, I made him give stock in the company. The few shares they gave him today are worth $75 million, which is way more than his deal. And the second thing, which is far more important, we made them spend $1 million in the first 6 months marketing. Now, no other player had even a commercial. Magic didn't have a commercial for Converse. Bird didn't have a commercial. And so when they put him on TV, day one, it jump-started his career with all the corporations like Coke and McDonald's because he was visible and they got a chance to see his personality. And like many things in life that are schizophrenic, like me being a lawyer and an entrepreneur, which are opposites, Michael is one of the most unbelievable players in the history of sports. But off the court, he's a very regular, down-to-earth, totally genuine guy. And that duality, I thought, was something that needed to be projected. And Nike spent a lot of money projecting it. So you guys don't remember this, but so they came out with the first shoe, and it was all black and red. And the NBA banned it in 5 minutes. They said, you can't wear the shoe. It doesn't conform to the team color code. So Strasser, my friend, the head of marketing, called me up in a panic. He just signed this really big deal. And he said, God, we're screwed. The league banned the shoe. I said, God, that's the best news I've heard in years. And he goes, why? I said, because we're going to do a Banned in Boston commercial. And within 24 hours, they came out with a commercial that said, like, on October 15th, Nike came out with a revolutionary basketball shoe. And on October 17th, the league banned it. And then they had like the dragnet things with the chisel, and they covered the shoes with a little black thing. And they said, fortunately, the league can't stop you from buying them. Oh God, the sales went through the roof. So I thought that Nike was the most hungry for Michael. They would spend the most money promoting him. Converse had the old mentality. You have to establish yourself first. And so in year one, Michael and Nike outsold every American shoe company by a mile. They sold $126 million worth of shoes, and they projected to sell 3. So I was thrilled. I thought it was the right connection. Now, I would say to your investors and your colleagues, one of the things I had to learn when I was very young and impetuous is that it's always better to turn down a good deal than to make a bad deal. Now, I saw on the phone on the chat room that we have another good friend of ours, Glenn Miles, on the
Yes.
podcast. And a week ago, Glenn, who Richard introduced me to in our expanding network, we had a deal on the table that I really wanted to make badly. And Glenn thought it was a good deal, but we had a very narrow window to execute the deal. And he said, look, I like the deal, but I think we're rushing it. And if you want to start off with some of the people I'm going to introduce you to, you can't have them think that you're your used car salesman. You have to sell this car by 5 o'clock today and get fired. And I thought that was really great advice by a guy who's been in the business a long time, very savvy guy. I agree with him 100%.
100 years.
I wanted to make the deal.
No, he's been in the business 100 years. And I'd love to hear what he has, if he has a different version on this, if Jennifer doesn't mind. And by the way, guys, if you're watching this, this is cross-pollination at its very best. But I want to point out something. You see, by working with an asset class like the active adult care and David Falk, I'm being able to leverage both David Falk and his track record, but at the same time, an asset class that's not going anywhere. Do you all get that? Just give me a thumbs up. So when you think of marketing, which is what David just spoke about, marketing in the form of $1 million to put Michael Jordan up on TV or billboards, in real estate's the same thing. Is marketing is working with like-minded people who've got established brands and a great reputation and are true mensches and wonderful mentors, where you get to cross-pollinate not just with the deal, but with the person. And that's why a Glenn Miles, for example, is a great example of that. He's my brother from another mother in New York. And we just got to say hello, Glenn, because I know that you likely might be up in Connecticut right now. Is that true?
I am here in Greenwich. Yes, I am.
Oh, my man. Well, it's just good to see you, because I want to make sure that people knew that I know 2 guys who are legendary. And tonight's a momentous night. And because David pointed out that you were here, I just want to make sure that we said hello. We'll have Glenn on another time talking about why he's in New York, why he named Times Square, because they wouldn't accept Times Circle as a name. I'm just kidding, but I'm dating him. But he's an incredible guy, Glenn. We want to just wish you and your family a happy New Year, pal.
All right, thanks so much. Really, the only thing I'll say regarding David and certain Rich, they're the best marketing guys I've met in my career. And the senior living area, just generally in real estate, generally has been the one area that was like the Rodney Dangerfield of real estate. It gets no respect, right? and by the way, I would argue for good reason, often, right? So the ability to rebrand, an area that's been hurt by unscrupulous guys, both developers as well as operators, is key. So from my perspective, the ability David is involved in this also, which is why I'm interested in participating in a big way, because he realized firsthand the graying of America, not because he's graying or I'm graying, which we are, but if you look at the parents, our parents, we all have parents or we've had parents who need quality care. And the ability to go from senior living to caregiving living is also crucial. And when Rich first introduced or reintroduced me, we've been traveling in similar circles for a very long time, finally the circles are intersecting once more, which I appreciative, right?
And by the way, to be really rude and un-Canadian, guys, you guys got to pay extra attention to this maneuver. I FaceTimed David Falk on a Monday night.
Oh, that was great. That was great.
And I was having dinner with Glenn, and we were at a corporate retreat in Miami. And I said, listen, David's a dear friend. Let me reintroduce you guys because you're like lost lovers in the world of real estate. I FaceTimed them. And folks, if you ever want to forge a real strong bringing together two people, nothing beats a FaceTime, catching the man in bed, right, with the headboard and all right behind him. And he's like, hey, pleasure to meet you guys. So David, I mean, I want to make sure people understand that this is not just an opportunity to learn more, because we'll get both Glenn and David here again, but this is what happens when you really cross-pollinate. Great brands, good track records, you know, passionate people who want to grow portfolios, and not just because you have got to find the deal, but you become a part of a deal, not just because of the property, but because of the people. And I just want to make sure
I want to amplify that if I can. So not having a financial background or a real estate background, in my career, I've gotten thousands of proposals. And I would say that I don't think I've gotten 10 of the 1,000 that didn't make their project sound like the best thing since sliced bread. People, you go on, you know, PowerPoint and give you these presents, and the numbers are always phenomenal. I'm the kind of a person, because I'm old fashioned, even though I love analytics, and Falk College at Syracuse is the first college in North America to give a degree in analytics, which I'm very proud of. I make deals based on people. And so in a place like senior living, you know, Rich got involved. Rich brought us Glenn. Glenn's brought us one or two very, very major people in finance. I'd rather not name at this point until Glenn tells me it's the appropriate time. And I think what you want in business more than anything, it's what I used to sell myself to my clients, is access. You want to be able to access people at the highest levels in a company, because they're the ones that are making the decisions. I had a client in the early 80s from Georgetown named Eric Sleepy Floyd, and he ended up in his third year on the Golden State Warriors, long before they were the great team that they are now. And the owner of the team I really liked, named Jim Fitzgerald, who used to own the Milwaukee Bucks. We had developed a great relationship. And when Eric's contract came up, his best friend on the team was a guy named Lester Connor, who'd gone to Oregon. They played in the backcourt together. So Lester's agent called up the team to do his contract, and they told him that the owner was on vacation for 6 weeks in Palm Springs and unavailable. So as the two players were comparing notes, and Eric said, oh yeah, I'm going to sign next week. And he said, well, how are you able to do that? The owner's on vacation for 6 weeks. He goes, well, wasn't on vacation for David. And so when you want to be in business and you want to access certain kinds of people, you have to have, it's like having a guide in the Himalayas. You're not going to climb Mount Everest without a Sherpa guide who knows every footfall and every rock. And for me, not being a real estate guy or a financial guy, I have Rich and I have Glenn as my guides to get to the right people at very, very high levels that are able to make decisions and make our company take off far quicker than it could if I was sitting down, blind calling people who'd say, David, what the hell do you know about real estate? Zero. But when I call up through a Glenn Miles as my guide or Rich, you get it. So you have to have access. I'll tell you another story. So I'm involved in a digital marketing company called Consumable in Washington, D.C., where I live. And the guy gave me a piece of the company to be an advisor. And about a year and a half into the business, he calls one day and he says, okay, we're ready to go. I need you to get me publishers. I said, easy, Mark. I know all the publishers. Simon & Schuster, Doubleday. He said, David, you dummy. I don't want book publishers. I want content publishers. I said, well, like, who do you mean? He said, well, I need like USAtoday.com, CBSSports.com, ESPN.com, whatever. And so I said, okay, let me ask you a very important question. Have you tried on your own to access these people? He said, yes, I got turned down by all of them. And the reason he got turned down wasn't because the people he spoke to didn't like his business model, but because it was sort of new and digital. They were afraid that if they recommended it to head management, and something went wrong down the road, that they say, you dummy, why didn't you anticipate that we're going to have this problem? So I called the chairman of each of the 10 companies. I called Bob Iger at Disney. I called Brian Roberts at Comcast. These are, multi-billion. And each one of them, when they called, the same people, Mark called and said, oh, my friend David called. I want you to take this meeting. All 10 of them said yes. We did like $65 million of business in the first quarter because it came down from the top. Now, I couldn't access those people. I could be talking for a blue streak. They never would have accepted the deal because they were afraid. And you have to have someone in your corner that can your champion to champion the deal, that the person they're talking to is going to know that Glenn Miles is not going to call a very wealthy guy and say, hey, I think you should invest in this company if he doesn't believe in it, because if it didn't work, he wouldn't deal with Glenn again. He would be reluctant to take his recommendation. So you have to be very, very discriminating in what you're recommending, but you have to have somebody with juice and clout and stature that can get to the people that are the decision makers. If you really want to build something special, a portfolio, a company, whatever.
I love that. I love that. You got to watch for the intrinsic purpose of a portfolio. Is it serving a need? Is it filling a need? Is it putting a roof over the heads of a working class or an aging class? I love it, David. Hey, listen, my friend, I just am
No,
so.
I got one more. I got one more for you.
You got another one? No, this is on your dollar. This is on your
I've eaten them on a roll. So in 1998, I went to work, as I mentioned, for free when I was 23 years old. And but the law firm I worked for grew into the second largest sports management company in the world. But my salary did not grow commensurate with the company. I never made any money the entire time I was there, but I was living my dream, representing some of the greatest players ever. And I would say, honestly, while I definitely wanted to make more money, and I could have made more anytime I wanted to, it wasn't my priority. But I went on my own in 1992. I told my partner, if I ever have to tell you what to pay me, or I'm going to quit if you don't pay me more, if I ever find out that any one of the companies make more money than I'm, except you, I'm gone. No excuses. Don't say I didn't know. One day I woke up, he failed both tests, and I resigned. And I went on my own. And 6 short years after making no money, I was making a good amount of money, we sold the business. And we hired Goldman Sachs, and we got some junior guy at Goldman, junior investment advisor, who told us the company's worth like $75 to $80 million. And I just got on my own. I loved having my name on the door. I loved not having a boss or a partner anyone had to answer to. And I didn't want to sell. So I made up my mind that if I couldn't get $100 million, I wasn't going to sell. And everyone said, God, David, that's really dumb. What's the difference whether you get 80 or 85? I said, no difference, but it's just arbitrary. You have to, in life, sometimes you have to have a threshold that if you can't pass the threshold, you're not going to do it. And my threshold, right or wrong, smart or dumb, was 100 million. So one day, the guy who was trying to buy our company, a guy named Bob Silliman, who created a company which is now called Live Nation, the largest concert promotion company in North America. He called me up to New York and he said, David, we've been at this for like 6 months. What do your people think that your company is worth? I said, they think it's worth 75 to 80 million. He said, well, my people think it's worth 75 to 80 million. Why can't we make a deal? I said, because I'm not going to sell it for 75 to 80 million. And he said, well, why not? I said, it's arbitrary. It's just it's a decision I've made and I'm going to live with. And I said, and if you don't think it's worth, he said, well, what would you sell it for? I said, I'd sell it for anything that started with 100. And I said, and if you don't think it's worth 100, you won't offend me in the least, because my people don't think it's worth 100 either. But I just want you to know that I don't have to sell. I'm doing well. There's no pressure to sell. And if you tell me it's not worth 100 and you come to me next summer, my number is going to probably be 200. Because the longer I'm on my own, the less desire I'm going to have to sell. And so in the middle of this dialogue, I get a call one day from a guy I met twice in my life. I'd say, being generous, for a total of 20 minutes. The first time was in Chicago. Michael had a little golf company that was selling licensed merchandise at kiosks in the airports. And he sold it to AMF. AMF was owned 25% by Goldman Sachs. And I met a very senior guy at Goldman Sachs. Guy's name was Hank Paulson. He was the chairman of Goldman. And he called me up on a Sunday and he said, David, I heard that you were selling your business and you've hired my company. Why didn't you call me? And I didn't even understand the question. I said, why on earth would I call you? Because we're selling the company. He said, I want to help you. I said, you want to help me sell this tiny little company when you're out at the time? So he jumped into the negotiations. And the deal ended up going to 200 million because of Paulson's presence. And when it was over, I took him to lunch to thank him because his stature was so overwhelming. And I said, Hank, you know, I represent some really great players like Michael Jordan, Patrick Ewing, John Stockton, and some of the smaller players are jealous that you don't have time because you have the big guys. How on earth did you have time to help me sell this tiny little company? What were you working on? And he wouldn't tell me. Rich knows, I'm very stubborn. I was not going to not get an answer to my question. So I asked him like 7 times. And finally, the 7th time, he finally said, look, you know, if it's really that important, I did 4 mergers during the 6 months that we were working on your deal. Chrysler and Mercedes, Southwest Bell and Ameritech, Universal and Polygram, and Bank of America Nations Bank. Those 4 deals were for $1.7 trillion, and Goldman made $255 million in fees on the 4 deals, which is more than the value of our whole company. So after that, when people would say, am I too small to be a client? Say, you know, let me tell you a story. So that having a guy like that in your corner, you know, to me means the world. But so I sold the business, and the minute I sold, that's why I'm telling the story about portfolio management. I got calls from people I heard from for 30 years. Say, oh God, Dave, I saw you just made a lot of money. Put it in horses. Next guy called and say, put it in oil and gas, commercial real estate. You name an asset class, and ones that I've never heard of. And I must have had 50 people giving me unsolicited financial advice. And I've been around a lot of meetings with my clients with financial advisors. So while I'm not an expert, I'm not a novice. So I called this older friend of mine who lives I'm in Florida, lives in Palm Beach, who had been the president of both Salomon Brothers and Lazard Frères in Chicago. And I said, Ira, I really don't want to impose on our friendship, but I'm really confused. What should I do with all this money I just made? And so he was very calm. He said, well, how much money do you think you need to live on? And I really hadn't thought about that. I said, I don't know, $250,000 a year. He said, David, you're a smart guy. That is probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard you say in your life. You just made, you know, a lot of money. You're not going to live on $250,000 a year. I said, Ira, you're wrong. My house is paid for. My cars are paid for. My kids' college is paid for. I'm not going to buy a boat, not going to buy a plane. Like, what do I need? And so he thought for a minute and he said, okay, let me ask you a different question. How much money do you think would be an obscene amount of money for you to spend in a year? Just on whatever you want, clothes, cars, whatever. So I said, $1 million. I said, that's a good answer. He goes, I want you to put $25 million into municipal bonds. They're going to throw off 4 to 5% tax-free. That's your $1 million for the rest of your life, and put the rest into equities. The market goes up 800 points, your portfolio is bigger. If it goes down 800 points, doesn't matter, you got your $1 million. And that's exactly what I did. And so I think that when you're building a portfolio, the mistake that I think most financial advisors make is they cookie cut everyone and tell them, you know, 60-40 equity. You know, it all depends upon your tolerance for risk. So after taking his advice, I put the money in August of '88, and I put a lot of money with Goldman. And the first 2 months it went down like 8%. And I went from like 50% bonds to 80% bonds because I didn't have the tolerance to lose money that I was very lucky to make. It took a long time to make. And so I think each individual investor has to decide what is their risk tolerance. And, you know, while hedge funds can perhaps make more money, they could also lose more money. And you have to have a person that's managing your money that is sensitized to your personal needs. And all of us on this call have dramatically different needs. We're different ages, different stages in our life. Some people want to give the money away. Some people want to be on the Forbes list. And I think it's really important that you have someone that can personalize your needs into a well-planned portfolio.
I love that, David. Thank you so much. Especially, I want to rewind, but just because you just said that, I have to say what the Real Estate Wealth Lab stands for. And one of those is exactly that, creating a financial plan that's going to take someone wherever they are currently all the way through to the end, through the succession planning. And we've got those tools and calculators. So for those of you rural members who are considering it, go check them out. That was a little plug. I had to do that. But I just wanted to rewind a little bit, and something you said at the very beginning of your conversation that really struck. You've got lots of stories and experiences of collaboration and the importance of nurturing relationships, and how they've really, like you just said, like you were able to call someone up and ask and not impose on the friendship, but you got what you needed. But you also said, and something that while I was doing research for you coming on to this call today, I read this quote, so I was happy that you said it, and it was about loyalty, and it must be two ways. And that's when we were talking about with your relationship with your employer, and they weren't quite giving you what you wanted, and you've been loyal, but it had to be both ways. And I thought, that is a man that I absolutely need to get to know, because and everybody here, when you're talking and considering about your relationships, you can be loyal, and you need to expect it and have those benchmarks, those thresholds, not only for the business, but also for your relationships, that you know and stand for something. So I just thought that was really amazing, David. So thank you for sharing all of these stories.
I mean, I tell stories, not so much to entertain. That's how I teach, because some people teach about theories, like what they think is going to happen. And I believe in experiential learning. I think, if you've been there and you've done it and you have a perspective on it, we talked a little about analytics. I mentioned that my Falk College, it's the first school in America, to give a degree. And in sports, analytics has overtaken professional sports. And you have these young MIT whiz bangs that come out and they model everything. And the owners, because they're all from either techs or financial guys, love it. And so when I teach, I ask my students, is Warren Buffett the greatest investor in American history? Because on his Bloomberg screen, he has different analytics than everyone else. So he knows what stocks are going to go up and down better than anyone else. And the answer is, of course not. He has the identical analytics that everyone else has. And so the question then becomes, what makes him such a great investor? And the answer is sort of twofold. One, he has amazing judgment. And two, he reads the numbers differently than I would read them. And I say to my students, if you broke your ankle and you got an x-ray and you walked into the radiologist's office and he put the x-ray up and he said, well, do you see the break? Now, unless you were lying, there's no way you know where the break is. You're just not going to know because you're not used to reading x-rays. And when most young people who haven't been through a couple of serious financial declines like 87 or 2008, and they see the numbers, they're not able to temper the numbers with their experience in business. And so it's great to have analytics that what I call like economic guidelines, leading economic indicators, but they're not the answer. They're just guidelines. And they're never a substitute for good judgment. I think you hire a person to manage your money a little bit like I talked about being an entrepreneur that has tasted some downturns that no one anticipated and understands how difficult they are, how crushing they are, and also has the ability to sort of look into the future and get a sense of where trends are leading and what kinds of things might be, interesting. I had lunch with a baseball player yesterday at Michael's club, Justin Verlander, my new friend, great guy. And he was asking me, could I recommend to him NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which are, he wants to buy them. He wants to buy the next like Mona Lisa in NFTs that 15 years from now, he'll buy it for 100,000 and it's going to be worth 10 million. Now, I really respected that because NFTs are going to be a tremendous item of commerce, of digital commerce. But I think in managing your money, you know, everyone has different tolerances and different things they want to accomplish. And if you want to play with your money, like I put 5-10% of my money away in private venture stuff, and I expect, just like Sequoia or, you know, Andreessen Horowitz, eight out of the 10 companies that I pick that I think I could help are going to go under. But the 1 or 2 that you hit, if you hit Uber or whatever, you know, you're gonna really do well. So I'm fascinated by wealth management. I really am. And there are a lot of people doing it. But you really have to trust the person that's giving you advice. And I think the person giving advice has to listen to the client and understand really what their needs are and their risk tolerance. And, you know, I had a guy that managed a sector of my money, and I meet him quarterly. Every single time, without fail, that I met him, he told me I had too much money in bonds, that I'd get a higher return if I put it in hedge funds. And I said, I know that. But first of all, you know, the hedge fund you recommended threw off 11.5%. I'm getting 5 on my bonds. I paid ordinary income because they churn the money. So I got a 5.5% return after tax, and I got 5% on the bonds after tax. Do I want to risk my money in a hedge fund for 0.5%? Not a chance in history. Well, when the market crashed, he had $14 billion under management. And I had the second highest performing portfolio of all his clients. Why? Because I had the highest percentage of money in bonds. Now, I don't have that today because the bond market is so soft, but you know, I think it's really important as either a client or a manager to have a sense of what you're comfortable with, and to not put yourself in places where you're not comfortable. It's just not worth it.
Well, that's a great segue to the way we're going to close, and that is that you know, I like to follow the smart money, and what I love about working with you, David, is that I come behind yours. And I mean, I have a new motto now. It's respect the economics, but remain loyal to the people. And behind every great property are great people, right, folks? I mean, if you're tracking this, just give me a thumbs up. So the reality is that if and I'm getting a lot of direct messages. If you want to learn more on what David Falk is doing with his money in real estate, if you want to learn more about what we're doing together as developers, only because I'm parking money, time, and bandwidth with him, I trust he sees where the future is heading, and I always trust in real estate, especially when there's competent people. If you want to learn more, if you can champion what David's up to in your neck of the woods, to your clients, your downline, your network, or you simply are just curious to know more about what David's doing now at this juncture in his financial life, please send a note to the Real Estate Wealth Lab directly. I believe it might be at Paige. Send her a quick note, Paige, if you can put in your contact info in there, and we'll make sure that David and his team get an idea for what you now. Don't ask David for advice on what new Jordan shoe you should be collecting. Don't be asking about what Jordan's handicap is now. Don't even ask about his handicap. Okay, maybe you can.
Well, I have to admit, I wanted to know that one.
Yeah. His handicap is his family. He has a beautiful family. That's his handicap. I mean, they're a beautiful bunch of folks. And so that being said, send Paige a note, and I promise you, as a chief growth officer for the people, I will make sure I introduce these conversations to David and his team, to see if there's a wonderful way for you to be a part of this chapter in his life and map out the next chapter in yours. David, is that cool with you?
Absolutely.
David, thank you so much for being here, my friend. I mean,
I really enjoyed it. Sorry for taking so much time for you people. I think, you know, I just saw I love it, you know, after an hour, someone said, who on earth is David Falk? Why is he telling us all this story? So, but I'm glad you didn't make an introduction. You know, I hate these intros. You could Google me, whoever asked, you could Google me and you'll get like 75% accurate.
No, David, some people came in here from an open public portal thinking that we were serving food and coffee. So that they were just here for the meal. So they weren't even supposed to be here. So it was all good.
No problem. Anyway, stay safe. Everyone stay safe. Rich, always an honor to be with you, my friend. Jennifer, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. I wrote a book, which is 11 years ago. It's sort of out of date. I got to write another one. It's called The Bald Truth. I don't know if anyone will have a tough time understanding where that title came from. That's called The Bald Truth. It's what I've learned in business from representing the best and the brightest in sports and dealing with some of the most well-known chairmen of major companies, around the world. I really had fun writing it. Got a lot of compliments on the business lessons. I'm going to have one last piece of advice. Okay?
Please do.
So when I finished writing the book, Simon and Schuster, they called me up and said, "God, we really like the book, but we want you to take each chapter and just have like 4 or 5 takeaways from the particular chapter. We're going to call them Falk's Facts." And so that was the most fun part of the book. It was like, if you ever watched a quiz show, it's like the lightning round in a quiz show. You sit down, you don't have like a week to think about it. You just have to, whatever comes into your mind. And so the best one of all of them, I thought was, I was talking about how you determine what's success. Like if you have $10 million, is that successful? Is $100 million successful? $1 billion? Like, where would you say, sort of like me, to decide what to sell my company for? And so I said that the last baseball player in the history of Major League Baseball to bat 400 in a single season was Ted Williams about 80 years ago. It's considered one of the most iconic records in all of sports. And when you think about it, what that means is that 60% of the time that Ted Williams went to the plate to take it at bat, he failed to get a hit. Learn to define success. Like if you took a test in high school or college and you got a 40, would someone say, "Wow, Dan Nielsen, you freaking aced that test, you got a 40." In what business would getting a 40 be considered acceptable? Forget about being iconic. But in baseball, hitting 400, no one's ever come close to it in the last 80 years. And so I think in every business and every individual in business, you have to determine for yourself what is your barometer of success. And then you have to go after it with a vengeance, and you have to stick to it. You can't be jumping around with different benchmarks. And every business has different success levels. I worked for the second largest company in the world. I went on my own, developed a very small company with 24 employees and 40 clients. I sold it and developed the largest company in the world. And now I have a company with 1 partner and 10 clients. Now, I've been all over the map. I love being a boutique. And in our real estate company, we're a boutique. We're going to stand for being a boutique. If you're a car dealer, last thought, if you're a car dealer, okay, and you're selling Chevrolets in the United States, average Chevrolet dealer sells 300 cars a month. They have to give rebates, they have to give financing, they have to give deals. If you're selling Ferraris, you sell an average of 3 cars a month. No discounts, no financing. The only thing you negotiate if you're a Ferrari dealer is how many years does it take that person to come to your dealership to get the car. And even if you're the Sultan, Michael has a collection of Ferraris, and he showed me this one he had that's worth about $17 million. And the Sultan of Brunei, who was allegedly the richest man in the world, tried to get the car, couldn't get it. So I always wanted to be a Ferrari dealer. I wanted to be small, boutique-y. I wanted to be the upper end of the market. And I wanted to have friends like Rich introduce me to people like Glenn Miles to help us fund. So thanks for your time.
Hey, before you go, guys, I'm getting far too much fire here. Guys, put a thumbs up in the chat room if you want to see this guy come back here again. I'm going to have to put you on the spot, David, because there's been so many people that have been asking me, is there any way you can get David back here again? And I'm like, absolutely.
But I can't tell the same stories. We have to
no. We'll send you the recording. But David, I love you. I love your family. I get to be a part of the greatest next chapter in your life and legacy. And it's evidenced and demonstrated by bringing incredible people I equally love, like Glenn Miles. Thank you to him for joining us. David Falk, thank you so much for coming all the way in from Florida.
Anytime. My pleasure. Enjoy it.
Well, we'll see you again.
Stay safe. Everyone stay safe.
You too, my friend.
Thank you. And I'd love to call up the rest of the Real Estate Wealth Lab team because now we've had what an amazing time. So Richard Dolan said yes.
Yeah.
the dress, and we've had David Falk on, and you know that conversation was and perfect. We've got everybody. Is Jan still here? All right, well, I'll just quickly do a little round of who's who in the zoo, and then we are going to wrap this up. So, Richard, thank you again for being our Chief Growth Officer, but that's not ours, that's the
No,
members.
not yours. I don't work for the company. I work for the members. So, I mean, I'm happy to assemble really powerful and very, very purposeful people like Glenn Miles, who I know is here. I'm going to ask him to go off so I can go call him now and bug him because we've been teasing each other with a phone call today. I miss you, buddy. But I mean, David Falk and so many others. You know, real estate is it feels like it's a one-man sport, but it's a team event. It feels like it's a one-man sport, but it's a team event. And folks, I just shared with you two great human beings. I don't know if you sense the love. You all just thumbs up if you sense the love. You sense the love? I mean, I'm not interested in assembling products and services, although lots of people sell them. That's not, I think, what RULE stands for. RULE stands for bringing together like-minded people and sharing just that. War stories, front of the line stories, and insights that you guys can lean into and at least be illuminated by and inspired with to say, gosh, you know what? $100 million is actually a good idea for my portfolio. So I'm just kidding. So Jennifer, you're more than welcome, and thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome, thank you. And we've got Ken, our Chief Operating Officer. Give a wave there, Ken. Awesome. And Naran is our Chief Leadership Officer. We've got Paige, our Head of Customer Experience. Vincent, our Chief Technology Officer. Yan, our Chief Marketing Officer, and there are so many more of amazing individuals who have come together to provide and create something that's next level for next level investors. And if any of this resonated with you today when it came to, I mean, how many of you have had troubles before finding those great relationships or vetting those relationships with other next level investors that maybe they didn't quite fit, or not finding the right people at the right level that you want to go big on a project? And if you've had those kinds of challenges, or what I thought was really cool, because David Falk said this and I did not know it was going to go there, but being analytical and having those economic indicators, but knowing how to analyze them. And there is so much changing out there. That's why we created the real estate cycle formula, because it can't be the same old way, because we have to look based on the pandemic, based on the changes. We have to look at economic indicators differently. And I was like, oh, perfect. So if you're having troubles with those, I would like to invite you all out to our community lab, which is next Wednesday, same time, same channel, basically. And we are actually going to be doing just a little calculator, but we're also going to be doing the very first brand new, never been done before, chemistry lab. Okay, you might be wondering, chem lab? Pardon? Yes, chemistry, as in relationships. You're going to meet each other, your members, next level opportunities to network and to share anything about yourself. It's going to be rapid fire. It's going to be super speedy. It's going to be super fun. And you're going to get to know, and just like David was mentioning and Richard's been mentioning, that legacy of relationships and how important they are over time. And then at our next research lab, which is the following Wednesday, so towards the end of the month, I don't have the date in front of me, I guess the 26th, I think, we are going to be going through those economic indicators and applying good diligence and good analytics that are grounded in the experience of not just me, but all of these amazing people here. So I really encourage you to join the free trial, join our group, our community, and we're just getting started. Look at this growth.
What I love about what you're saying, I don't know about you guys, but I see a lot of familiar faces from various real estate investor groups. And I don't know about you, but I got Netflix, I got Apple, I got Prime. I mean, I got Funimation. I've got 5 channels I pay for in addition to my cable. So I want to make sure it's really clear here. This is not about RULE versus the others. This is not about the Real Estate Wealth Lab is the thing against all things. There's nothing wrong with having a multitude of channels. All I know is that we're having a different type of conversation and access to people who are going to expand your experience of what next level investing looks like. So what I took away from David is every time I'm around him, I feel like I got to go and do more. Who's with me when you heard him? I'm like, gosh, I'm complaining about an achy back and a clicking knee. I'm like, I should get the hell up and warm the hell up. You know what I'm talking about, Dan? Like, I got to get up, Douglas. I got to stretch and go do something. I mean, this guy's hit two rounds of golf today and raised $200-something million. And what am I doing? But that's what it's about. This is not about comparison. This is not about being able to feel belittled. This is about being in a different conversation for elevation. And I think if you consider the Real Estate Wealth Lab as a place to belong to as well, I think you'll find it as a complement to wherever else you might belong and wherever else you might be getting some information, insight, or research from. So I know that you'll trust to see that be true. So thank you, Jennifer.
Beautiful. Excellent. Well, I hope to see you all next week.
Chief Growth Officer Richard Dolan, checking off. Thanks, everyone. I missed you all. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Paige, Vincent, Ken, Jan, Naman, and Naran. Thank you so much. Thank you for your trust, your leadership, and the invitation. I promise I won't let you down. It's either dominate or go home. So let's go.
Sounds good.
Thank you, team.